Firstly, I want to present about the background of the study. Many developing and less developed countries have made micro and small enterprise the backbone of national economic development. Micro and small enterprises have also been recognized as a major source of employment and income in third world countries. In Malaysia, micro and small entrepreneurs are a major source of income of the working age population and reduce poverty and unemployment. However, the growth of SMEs in Malaysia is still facing a number of issues, both internal and external. Internal factors include lack of capital, limited human resources such as skills and expertise, and the weakening of entrepreneurial institutions. External factors include non-conducive business climate, limited resources, and infrastructure free market implications that lead to increased competition and poor market access. In addition, the small credit ratios of micro enterprises provided by banking have not been able to meet the financial needs of micro enterprises, which, in view of their numbers, is greater than in other sectors of the business. Thus, the concept of financial inclusion has been introduced globally as a monetary policy that provides credit access to micro and small enterprises. The widespread provision of financial service is believed to accelerate economic growth by providing access to effective capital with open job opportunities for the poor. However, the impact of microfinance has varied results depending on the community, borrower behavior, group, business group, financial management, provision of financial service, and others. This study will evaluate whether borrowing from loan shark alone loans will impact micro entrepreneurs for running their business. The problem with this study is how micro entrepreneurs use alternative informal financing. In addition, it also examines how microfinance offers Islamic finance as a solution to be free of riba.
Problem statement consists three parts, which are issue, evidence, and solution. The issue in this study was the borrower will face with the consequence like threat, intimidation, harassment, and violence if they not able to pay the debt in time. There are articles reported by BH Online in June 2020 where the loan shark was burned the house of borrower when he failed to pay the debt. This was one of the evidence that show the loan shark used violence to deal with the pupil. Another issue is the loan sharking activity was clearly illegal because the financial lending service offered contained the element of lending by charging high interest rate. Interest was a riba which has mentioned in the hadith of Prophet that every loan and debt which has its benefit is a riba. We know the riba or interest was haram through the Holy Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah verses 275, which stated the prohibition of riba. The solution for all of this problem is choose Islamic finance as a medium for financial sources. Why choose Islamic finance? It was because Islamic finance resurrected financial practice that conform to Islamic law principle. Islamic finance did not issue interest-based loan, which known as a risk sharing or murabaha. Risk sharing is where the Islamic finance made a profit on the transaction as a reward for the risk they took with the customer. Islamic finance will buy the underlying product, then resell it on installment to the client for fixed price that was higher than market value. That's how Islamic finance get their profit. Islamic finance also use equity participation system. This system was when the bank loan a money to a business and the business will pay back the loan without interest, but it gives the bank a share in its profit. If the business does not earn any profit, the bank also will not receive any profit. There are three research questions in this study. First question is what the impact of borrowing from loan shark. Second question is how Islamic finance provide an alternative to micro entrepreneur. Last question is what features Islamic finance use to offer a solution that is free from riba. All these questions should be able to answer in the study.
Next, I want to present about the research objective. There are three objectives of this research. First, to identify the impact of borrowing from loan shark to the micro entrepreneur. Second, to conclude on how micro entrepreneurs use alternative informal financing. And third, to analyze on how microfinance offers Islamic finance as a solution to be free of riba.
Significance of study. Significance of study can be defined as part of the introduction section of a finding and thesis. This part is provided a lot of detail to the reader and how this research and finding will contribute, such as what and who will benefit from this finding. It also includes an explanation of the word important as well as its potential benefits, as it is sometimes called rational. As we all know, borrowing from loan shark is not a good and it is a last resort for borrower. Currently, loan shark give a problem to borrower with a high interest to repay the money they are borrow and have an element of injustice. It will give an effect to the borrower and people surrounding them. Besides, loan shark also non-halal financing because it has an element of riba and usury. As we all know, riba and usury are prohibited in Islam. From this problem, the solution is the people who borrow from a loan shark will be decreased and there will be awareness among micro entrepreneur about the loan shark. This micro entrepreneur can make a financing to Islamic financing which is more halal and free from riba and usury. This study can help the researcher to identify the impact of borrowing from loan shark to the micro entrepreneur and how micro entrepreneur use alternative informal financing. This research also analyze how microfinance offer Islamic finance as a solution to be free of riba. This will be the objective in our research. Literature review. A comprehensive review of literature has been conducted in this chapter in the intention of learning and adapting more information from previous study, survey, and research. This chapter describes the underlying theory that are used in this study, previous study, and research framework. The purpose of this study was to examine the impact of microfinance on micro entrepreneur involved in borrowing loan shark or a loan. Further than that, a purpose conceptual framework has been developed based on the research objective.
Problem statement consists three parts, which are issue, evidence, and solution. The issue in this study was the borrower will face with the consequence like threat, intimidation, harassment, and violence if they are not able to pay the debt in time. There are articles reported by BH Online in June 2020 where the loan shark was burned the house of borrower when he failed to pay the debt. This was one of the evidence that showed the loan shark used violence to deal with the pupil.
Previous studies. Several researchers has analyzed the case of loan shark, but none has addressed in terms of microfinance. As a research done by Permana 2010, which examined the practice of loan shark as an aggressive underground economy, since the local community support the system. The reason why people feel that they were difficult to gain access to the loan from bank and other formal financial institution because of the condition that blinded the loan. Other than that, Saputra in, in into 012 years research from the economical institution aspect regarding bank practice in battered slum area in Malang. The study found that the local community depended on bank creditor offer because of their minimum income compared to their spending, as well as the difficulty to access formal financial service to get loan for their daily needs and venture capital. Furthermore, Catano observed loan shark from a sociological point of view. Loan shark was called traditional capital market. The study found that loan shark was a form of traditional capital market born as a social phenomenon. The structural element and social relationship produce its characteristic and dynamic. The aspect of trust and daily interaction become part of the traditional capital market operation mechanism, either to attract customer, suppress the competition, and monitor the obedience. Consumption market, where the capital market was observed, also revealed similar social systems. It seemed that the market structure and dynamic were related to the structure of traditional capital market developed there. As a step to look at the meaning behind the described phenomena, the researcher also encouraged to uncover the practice, business, and finance in loan shark amongst micro entrepreneurs. The finding from the exploration of the financing examples, which based on local value in loan shark activities, theoretically can initiate new perspective in the development of finance, generally from the perspective of social and cultural theory.
Next, I want to present about the research objective. There are three objectives of this research. First, to identify the impact of borrowing from loan shark to the micro entrepreneur. Second, to conclude on how micro entrepreneurs use alternative informal financing. And third, to analyze on how microfinance offers Islamic finance as a solution to be free of riba.
Research design. Researchers have used descriptive research method. It is intended to provide a systematic explanation of the fact and characteristics of a population that is of interest to the fact. Descriptive research method is chosen because it was in line with the topic of the study and based on the objective of the study. The context is a context analysis where the researcher analyzed the primary data from a report obtained from the Bazar to Guru in Kelantan. Data collection method. Data collection method used in this research were based on interview questions that were asked by the researcher. The researcher used structured interview because the question followed the path set by the researcher. The interviewing technique used by the researcher are individual interview, both for individual and for more personal information. It allows respondents to respond more deeply without shame and suspicion. Study population and sample size. The target population for this research was micro entrepreneur in area Kota Baru, Kelantan. There are 37823 micro entrepreneur in Kota Baru at 2016. In this research, we use around 500 micro entrepreneur at Bazar Tuk Guru. 470 out of 500 was token loan either from formal or informal financial institution. However, another 30 micro entrepreneur had not taken loan. 380 out of 470 micro entrepreneur had borrowed from informal financial institution such as Amanah Ikhtiar, while another 90 micro entrepreneur was taking loan from formal institutions such as Bank Muamalat. Sampling technique. In this research, we use a non-probability sampling technique. Combined sampling technique will be adapted for interview 10 micro entrepreneur. The closest micro entrepreneur we had met at Bazar Tuk Guru from seed and conference. Other than that, we use a progressive sampling. Group of subjects with specific characteristics only selected based on the research knowledge and specific purpose. This does not mean that all other studies in the population are selected by the researcher as a respondent. There are about 470 micro-entrepreneurs in the selected institution. Research instrument. This exploratory study employed a qualitative research approach, a library search and interview. The micro-entrepreneurs were asked about the problem they faced with loan application from SMEs. The main purpose of this study was to prove the existence of the subject under discussion, that is the problem that banks face with loan application by SMEs. Although the data collection was based on a semi-structured questionnaire, the respondent had the freedom to raise issues not addressed by the question, providing they fell within the scope of the research. The interviews were conducted with officials in charge of SME in their respective banks and used to cut the problem involved with loan application. After conducting the interview, the researcher believed that the information obtained was sufficient to achieve the research method.
The research proposal was covered three chapters, which are Introduction, Literature Review and Research Methodology. Chapter 1 was introduce the study and state the focus of the study. It generally tells about what the research is about. It begins with a brief introduction and background of the study. Then it follows with the problem statement, research question, research objective, scope of the study, and significance of the study. Lastly, it will close with the definition of term and summary. Chapter 2 is a literature review. The purpose of literature review is to provide a comprehensive review related to the problem. It also presents the information and conclusion drawn by other research. It contains introduction, underpinning theory, previous study, conceptual framework, and summary. Chapter 3 was present a discussion of the steps used to collect the data. It also described the population used in the study and the process utilized in selecting a sample. This chapter contains introduction, research design, data collection method, study population and sample size, sampling technique, research instrument, and close with the summary.
Next, I want to present about the timeline or Gantt chart. The Gantt chart is a bar chart depicting the project schedule named after its creator, Henry Gantt, who created the charts around 1910 to 1915. The modern Gantt chart also shows the relationship between activity and current table status. When the researchers did the research proposal, first the researchers identify the problem and issue of the research for 2 weeks, when are from the first week to the second week of March. After that, the researchers define the topic research for 7 weeks, when are from the third week of March to the first week of May. Next, the researchers do the literature review of the research for 6 weeks, when are from the first week of April to the second week of May. After that, the researchers define and build the research framework of the research for 6 weeks, when are from the second week of April to the third week of May. Next, the researchers define research instrument of the research for 5 weeks, when are from fourth week of April to the fourth week of May. After that, the researchers collected data on the research for 5 weeks, when are from first week of May to the first week of June. Next, the researchers do analyze the data of the research for 5 weeks, when are from second week of May to the second week of June. After that, the researchers do write the report for 5 weeks, when are from third week of May to the third week of June. Lastly, the researchers have completed the research with do final revision and submit to the supervisor for 3 weeks, when are from second week to the fourth week of June. So in summary, the researchers prepared the research proposal for 4 months.